The August sun bakes the Southerners as they march north, and the heat shows no mercy to the troops, regardless of rank or branch of service. The narrow road is jammed with ammunition wagons, artillery, and ambulances. Thick clouds of dust fill the air, clogging men's throats and eyes. Jackson rides with his cap pulled down to keep the sun from his eyes. To those who ride past him, he seems preoccupied, as well he might be. The night before, Union cavalry had raided his bivouac, setting off a firestorm of musketry at 3 o'clock in the morning. Jackson frets constantly about the 1,200 wagons the army has rumbling along in its train. When his personal surgeon, Dr. Hunter McGuire, asks Jackson if he expects a battle that day, Jackson flashes the hint of a smile. Banks is on our front, and he is generally willing to fight, says Jackson, adding in an aside, and he generally gets whipped. Then he falls silent again. The sponsor of this video, and who had been sponsoring our channel for some time now, is NordVPN, a VPN I would recommend to anybody. NordVPN has been very helpful for me as it keeps my data safe when I access the web, as we work hard to bring you highly detailed videos every couple of weeks. NordVPN is the best VPN out on the market, as it will keep your data safe and give you a smooth online experience. Not only that, but if you're ever visiting a country that has your favorite website blocked, you can use NordVPN to access it remotely, as Nord gives you the ability to change your virtual location. With over 5,600 different servers in 59 different countries, you can find a server that fits your needs, whether better content or faster speeds. NordVPN is confirmed to be the fastest VPN out on the market. Also, NordVPN lets you connect up to 6 devices to ensure that you are safe on whatever device you use to access the internet. You can try NordVPN today for 30 days risk-free by using my special coupon link nordvpn.com/Warhawk, which is down in the description. While the Confederate commander frets, the enemy begins to move. Samuel Crawford, a brigadier with a solid record that stretches back to the opening days of the war, leaves Culpeper at noon on August 8th, taking with him 2 artillery batteries to support the Federal cavalry operating south of the town. On August 9th, the rest of Banks' 2nd Corps, roughly 8,000 men, joins Crawford on the high ground between the 2 branches of Cedar Run. The 5 Federal infantry brigades deploy in line of battle along a 2-mile front to await the Confederate attack. Banks is considered by his contemporaries to be an aggressive general. He had been soundly whipped a few months before by Jackson in the northern Shenandoah Valley, and he is looking to even the score. Despite Pope's warning to wait for reinforcements, Banks has no intention of staying on the defensive if an opportunity presents itself to strike Jackson a hard blow. The fact that he has stationed his troops in line of battle astride the Culpeper Road is intended as a direct challenge to his foe. This is not at all what Pope has in mind, but Banks has a mind of his own. The Confederate vanguard, composed of 3 infantry brigades of Ewell's division, arrives at Cedar Mountain in the early afternoon of Saturday, August 9, 1862, but it would be several hours before the Confederates are deployed in an effective line of battle. Brigadier General Jubal A. Early's brigade deploys in the fields of the Crittenden Farm south of the Culpeper Road. Early pushes out a skirmish line from the 13th Virginia, accompanied by a section of 12-pounder Napoleons from DeCann's Battery, or Louisiana Guard Artillery, and sends the Union pickets from the 1st New Jersey Cavalry and the 1st Rhode Island Cavalry flying rearward. He heads toward the intersection of Culpeper Road and Madison Courthouse Road, just west of the mountain. The Battle of Cedar Mountain, also known as the Battle of Slaughter's Mountain, begins proper when Federal artillery organized into a grand battery opens up on Early's brigade at the Crittenden Farm from their position on Mitchell's Station Road, which runs perpendicular to the Culpeper Road. The feisty Early, still aching from the shoulder wound he had suffered at the Battle of Williamsburg back in May, would have to fight alone while Ewell takes the other 2 brigades of his division along the base of Cedar Mountain. The 2 brigades travel undetected on a road through the woods. Their objective is to seize the high ground at the eastern end of the mountain. When Ewell reaches the eastern edge of the mountain, he places Latimer's Virginia Battery on the commanding hill, providing them with a perfect field of fire on the Union Grand Battery in the distance. Because the units are nearly a mile apart, Early would have to rely on his own wits and the other 2 Confederate divisions for support. He personally leads a reconnaissance party that locates an old farm lane that diverges from the main road and spills out into the woods directly onto the farmland where the Union cavalry is forming. As Early's men creep through the woods, Confederate artillery opens up on the unseen Federals who lie beyond the rolling farmland. The Federals respond with a splendid salvo of counterfire from the Grand Battery that showers a choleric Early with dust. By 3 p.m., Early is in position and awaiting the deployment of Jackson's division under Winder. Before deploying his infantry, Winder personally places his division's artillery batteries just south of the Culpeper Road, near the gate that marks the entrance to the Crittenden Farm, aptly named the Crittenden Gate. As his infantry brigades arrive on the battlefield at the Crittenden Gate, Winder sends them forward one at a time. First, he sends Colonel Thomas S. Garnett's brigade into the woods bordering a large wheat field immediately north of the Culpeper Road. Next, Winder directs Brigadier General William B. Taliaferro's brigade of Virginians and Alabamians south of the turnpike to support and connect with the left flank of Early's brigade. Lastly, he orders Colonel Charles Ronald's brigade, the famed Stonewall Brigade, through the woods north of the road to take up positions on Garnett's left flank. While Garnett and Taliaferro execute their orders admirably, Ronald ends up far beyond and behind Garnett's left flank. The Stonewall Brigade comes to a halt in a tree line on the western end of a smaller field north of the one upon which Garnett is positioned. The brushy field, as it is referred to in contemporary accounts, is not where Winder has wanted the brigade placed. Ronald's failure to effectively carry out Winder's orders nearly cost the Confederates the battle almost before it starts. Banks deploys Brigadier General Christopher C. Augur's 2nd Division, comprising 3 infantry brigades, south of the Culpeper Road, and Brigadier General Alpheus S. Williams' 1st Division, consisting of 2 brigades, north of the road. The Federal right flank overlaps the Confederate left flank by nearly 300 yards. Both Jackson and Winder are unaware that the wooded ground north of the Culpeper Road presents a golden opportunity to the Federals to outflank the Confederates if they can attack before Jackson is able to extend his line. As Jackson awaits the arrival of A.P. Hill's Light Division before committing himself to battle, the two opposing sides engage in a ferocious artillery duel. Beginning at about 4 p.m., the Union and Confederate gunners duel for nearly 2 hours across open ground from 900 yards apart. Unlike the Federal guns, which are concentrated in the Grand Battery near the intersection of the Culpeper Road and Mitchell Station Road, the Confederates have deployed their guns in 4 separate positions between the Culpeper Road and Cedar Mountain. The placement of the Southern guns in clusters allows them to bring a converging fire on the Federal batteries that is so effective that the Northerners have to withdraw their guns more than once during the cannonade. Still, the Federal guns slow the pace at which the Confederate infantry can deploy and substantially delays Jackson's advance. Once the artillery contest is in full swing, the alien Brigadier General Winder becomes engrossed in the exchange, much to the detriment of his division. At one point, he orders Garnett to prepare to charge across the open ground in front of Early to seize a Federal battery he believes is unprotected. To carry out these orders, Garnett is forced to face 2 of his regiments in a refused position south along the Culpeper Road, rather than east towards the Federal infantry on the opposite side of the wheat field. This further weakens the Confederate left flank. Although he complies with the order, Garnett sends word back to Winder that the enemy guns cannot be taken because they are supported by both infantry and cavalry. Instead of sorting out the problem, Winder orders Garnett to keep the regiments aligned as instructed, and he turns his attention back to the artillery contest. While Winder's directing the artillery fire near the Crittenden Gate, a solid shot round comes whistling down from one of the Federal batteries and strikes him on the left side, nearly tearing off his arm at the elbow. The general quivers and drops to the ground with what is described as a tremendous hole in his side. A surgeon examines his wounds and deems them fatal. Winder's carried on a stretcher to the rear, where he dies less than 2 hours later. Jackson, hearing of the incident, raises his arm and bows his head for a moment of silent prayer. The wounding of Winder at 4:45 p.m. means that Brigadier General Taliaferro would now assume command of Winder's division, while command of his brigade would go to his brother, Colonel Alexander G. Taliaferro. The task that William B. Taliaferro inherits is a difficult one. Neither Winder nor Jackson have appraised him of their orders. What is more, Taliaferro begins receiving reports that the Federal troops are massing opposite the Confederate left flank. He personally inspects his left on horseback, but finds no evidence of an impending attack. Jackson, who is devoting most of his time to the situation south of the Culpeper Road, also inspects the left flank. Before riding away, Jackson tells Garnett to watch his left flank closely and, if necessary, request support from Taliaferro. While the Confederates are busy correcting the kinks in the deployment, the Federals south of the Culpeper Road attack. leaving behind Brigadier General George S. Greene's understrength 3rd Brigade. Augur sends John Geary's 1st Brigade and Henry Prince's 2nd Brigade forward at 5:45 p.m. against the Confederate right flank. Major General Banks watches intently from just north of the Culpeper Road as his blue ranks are swallowed up by the mature corn growing on the Crittenden farm. About the same time, Major General John Pope arrives on the field and joins Banks in observing the Federal attack. He had heard the booming of cannon from his headquarters and immediately ridden out to join Banks' forces. Across the field, Jackson sits atop his horse next to Tolliver's position. As the Federals approach, Jackson rises in his saddle and watches closely to see how the soldiers will meet the enemy attack. The forces facing each other on the Crittenden farm are nearly equal. The Federals field 10 regiments and 1 battalion. The Confederates matched the attackers with 9 regiments and a battalion. Geary's 1st Brigade advances on the right towards Tolliver's brigade, while Prince's 2nd Brigade advances on the left towards the battle line of Early's brigade. Augur is struck in the back by a bullet in the first few minutes of the attack and is carried to the rear. Geary advances first in double line formation with 2 regiments forward, the 7th and 66th Ohio, and another 2 regiments, the 5th and 29th Ohio, in reserve. Prince's 2nd Brigade attacks in 2 battle lines with the 102nd New York and 109th Pennsylvania on his left flank, and the 3rd Maryland and 111th Pennsylvania attack on his right. As the fighting grows in intensity, Union officers fall by the dozen, leaving Augur's division in disarray. Brigadier General Early sends word to Jackson that he needs reinforcements quickly in order to hold back the Federals. In response to the Federal advance, Ewell's guns in Cedar Mountain switch their attention from the enemy artillery to the Federal infantry on the plain below. When Early's messenger arrives, Jackson sends a courier to A.P. Hill urging him to hurry forward with his troops. Help is not far away. Brigadier General Edward L. Thomas's brigade had been marching at the double quick for the last mile of the 10-mile march that day. When the Georgians come pounding up the Culpeper Road, Jackson rides to meet them, hailing them as they arrive by waving his cap above his head. The Georgians respond with a loud cheer before moving to Early's support. When Jackson has stabilized his right, his left becomes unglued. From his position near Early's brigade, Jackson's attention is drawn to the loud rolls of musketry to the north. He tries to see what is unfolding through his field glasses, but his line of sight is blocked by both the rolling terrain and thick woods. When a courier tells him his left has been turned, Jackson spurs his horse and gallops back up the Confederate line. Fearing the worst, he begins ordering to the rear the rifled artillery near the Crittenden Gate, where the farm road exits the Culpeper Road. Meanwhile, Crawford's 1st Brigade of Williams' division lies concealed for most of the hot August afternoon in the woods along the banks of Cedar Run, where it cannot be seen by the enemy units forming up on the Confederate left. Just before dusk, when the length of the men's shadows on the ground exceeds their height, some 1,500 Union troops emerge from the woods and prepare to advance across a stubbled wheat field to engage their foe. They dress ranks, cross a fence, and with a loud cheer the huzzah, rush downhill towards the Confederate line. To the Virginians of Garnett's brigade, which occupy nearly identical wood on the opposite side of the wheat field, the attacking blue line seems to extend indefinitely in both directions. Before Crawford's brigade has advanced halfway towards its objective, the first of several musket volleys erupts from Garnett's Confederates. The musket fire soon becomes one continuous roar, like a never-ending peal of thunder. The Federals continue to advance despite the storm of lead, pausing briefly at the tree line before closing with the enemy. Soldiers swing their rifles like clubs and thrust at each other with bayonets. Although the Confederates occupy what appears to be a strong position along a fence line, the Union soldiers finally prevail in the bloody melee. Crawford's brigade has the good fortune of finding the Confederate left flank in the air. The Stonewall Brigade is farther to the left, but it has not yet advanced to the wheat field. Worse yet, 2 of Garnett's regiments are not even facing in the direction of the attack. The 1st Virginia Irish Battalion of Garnett's brigade reacts to the Federal attack like a man bitten by a rattlesnake. Panic spreads from one soldier to the next. Dozens fall alongside the fence in a matter of minutes. In no time, the Federals are over the fence and chasing the enemy through the woods. A number of the soldiers in the 1st Virginia Battalion simply drop their rifles and flee without looking back. The Federals change front to the east and roll down the line in the direction of the 42nd and 48th Virginia regiments. To stem the blue tide, these units would have to hold, and the Confederate command would have to rush reinforcements to the spot. Otherwise, the day would belong to the Federals. By taking Garnett's brigade in the flank, Crawford is able to multiply the effect of his attack manifold over a frontal attack. His objective has been the guns near the Crittenden Gate that Jackson has so wisely sent to the rear. Even though the guns are now safe, Jackson's entire line is slowly unraveling. Jackson writes after the battle that the Federals fell with great vigor on his left flank. Unless he stabilizes it, his left wing is on the verge of a major disaster. The Federals steadily drive their enemy before them. The 28th New York advances on the right, while the 5th Connecticut advances on the left. Interspersed with these regiments are elements of the 46th Pennsylvania. While the Confederate 1st Virginia Irish Battalion has fled without much of a fight, the 42nd Virginia stands its ground until fire from both the front and rear forces it to retreat as well. The 21st Virginia and 48th Virginia, which are facing south along the Culpeper Road, are the unluckiest of all. They do not discern what is happening until some of their numbers are shot in the back. Still, they try valiantly to fend off the attack. The two sides fight hand to hand in the thick woods. Soon, Garnett's entire brigade is routed from the field. When the Stonewall Brigade finally advances, it catches the rear elements of Crawford's attack in the flank. Two regiments of the Stonewall Brigade form along the fence line bordering the wheat field across which Crawford attacked, while the 3 remaining regiments advance through the brushy field next to it. These 3 regiments willed to change front before firing into the 3rd Wisconsin, which has been detached from Brigadier General George H. Gordon's 3rd Brigade and assigned to Crawford. Crawford's troops pour out of the woods, cross the Culpeper Road, and charge Taliaferro's brigade. They quickly rout 2 Green regiments on Taliaferro's left flank, the 47th Alabama and 37th Virginia. The 2 other regiments fall back but continue fighting. Early, who has just finished placing Thomas's brigade on his far right flank, gallops over a ridge and finds half his brigade gone. The Confederate line stabilizes temporarily when 4 well-served guns of the Middlesex Artillery under the command of Captain William Pegram fire a canister at point-blank range into the Yankee tide. Shortly afterward, Crawford's attack runs out of steam. Meanwhile, Jackson finds Major General Hill and orders him to deploy the rest of his light division immediately. The troops of Brigadier General Lawrence O'Brien Branch's brigade advance first and are soon followed by those of Brigadier General James J. Archer's brigade. Leaving General Hill to do as he has been told, Jackson rides to the Crittenden Gate, where he finds large numbers of men from Winder's division seeking protection in the woods south of the Crittenden Gate. Oblivious to personal danger, Jackson rides into the mass as bullets fly around him. In an effort to rally the men, Jackson tries to draw a sword, but finds it rusted in its scabbard. He unhooks it from his belt and waves the scabbard in the effort to get his men to reform. Thinking that this is not enough, he snatches a Confederate battle flag and begins beseeching his men to fight with his scabbard in one hand and a Confederate battle flag in the other. "Jackson is with you," he cries. "Rally, brave men, and press forward. Your general will lead you. Jackson will lead you. Follow me." When only a few dozen men stop, he yells, "Rally, men, remember Winder. Forward, men, forward." Jackson is able to form parts of Garnett's and Taliaferro's brigades into a new line. At that point, Taliaferro rides over to Jackson and implores him to retire. Good, Jackson says in his usual taciturn manner before riding to the rear. Major General Banks fails to follow up with Crawford's attack with reinforcements. Even though Gordon's 3rd Brigade, the other unit in Williams' 1st Division, has not yet been committed to the battle. Without support, the survivors of Crawford's attack have no choice but to retreat along their line of attack. There follows a series of inept moves by Banks and his subordinates. The first is the advance of the 10th Maine. The regiment, which has been detached from Crawford's brigade to guard a Federal battery, is sent alone into the wheat field at about 6:30 p.m., where it is sacrificed to no clear advantage. Next, Banks unnecessarily sacrifices the 1st Pennsylvania Cavalry in a desperate spoiling attack to cover the withdrawal of his artillery, losing 93 of his 164 horsemen in the futile charge. At dusk, Gordon's 3rd Brigade arrives opposite Archer's brigade, but it is too late to help Crawford. Gordon's men have marched nearly a mile to the battle at the double quick. Their effectiveness is greatly reduced by the difficulty they have telling friend from foe in the wheat field in the gathering darkness. As Gordon's men are deploying, the men of the Stonewall Brigade descend on Crawford's brigade as it limps back across a wheat field. The 5th Virginia charges across the open ground with fixed bayonets and plucks from the retreating troops the flags of the 5th Connecticut and 28th New York. When Brigadier General Dorsey Pender's brigade, another of Hill's fresh units, joins Branch and Archer on the Confederate left flank, Gordon's brigade finds itself in great peril. Jackson issues orders directly to both Pender and Branch. He sends Pender through the woods behind the Confederate left flank and then turns east towards the Federals. He orders Branch to incline right across the Culpeper Road to strike the Federals south of the road. While Branch is crossing the lane, Archer launches a frontal attack on Gordon. Archer's men waver midway to their objective. Nevertheless, he rallies his troops in the open field and orders them to conduct a bayonet charge against the Union position. The effect of Archer's attack is vividly described in Gordon's battle report. Companies were without officers. Officers and men were fallen in every direction from the fire of the enemy, which largely outnumbered my brigade. The brigade holds its ground until Pender strikes. Under the cover of the woods, Pender is able to approach to within a few dozen yards of the enemy. The combined force of Archer and Pender is more than Gordon's brigade can stand. With Pender in his flank and rear, Gordon orders a general withdrawal. The Federals are not only being pressed hard on the right and center, but also on their left by Ewell's descent from Cedar Mountain. The presence of the Confederates on the Federal left flank is enough to create a near stampede among the Union troops in that sector. Artillery crews hastily limber up their guns and move them north in the direction of Culpeper. They are followed by Greene's brigade of Augur's division, which has been held in reserve throughout the battle. By sunset, 8 Confederate brigades have entered the cornfield, leaving just Pender and Archer north of the Culpeper Road. As the moon rises in the night sky, Jackson pushes 2 reserve brigades of Hill's light division and substantial artillery up the road toward Culpeper. But Pope has already arrived on the battlefield and constructed a strong new line with fresh troops from Brigadier General James B. Ricketts' 2nd Division of McDowell's 3rd Corps. After reconnaissance by artillery proves that the Federals hold the road in strength, Jackson breaks off his advance near midnight. The battle is finally over. After drinking a glass of buttermilk to calm his stomach, Jackson stretches out on a cloak strewn across the ground and immediately falls asleep. Jackson waits for 2 more days after the battle to see if Pope will attack him. When he does not, Jackson withdraws to Gordonsville. The Union loses 2,353 men at Cedar Mountain, including 314 killed, 1,445 wounded, and 594 missing, while the Confederates lose 231 killed and 1,107 wounded for a total casualty list of 1,338. The name Slaughter's Mountain now has a new meaning to it as the dead and wounded littered the battlefield. Both Jackson and Banks are satisfied with the performance of their troops at the Battle of Cedar Mountain. Jackson has achieved a tactical victory by driving the Federals from the battlefield, but he has suffered a strategic defeat by failing to capture Culpeper and annihilate Banks when he had the chance. But even though Pope had won a strategic victory, Jackson has effectively snatched the initiative from him at Cedar Mountain, and Pope would not regain it again for the rest of the Northern Virginia campaign.